Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Big Maps webinar. My name is Mark Finch. I'm the Senior Account Manager at Grey Matter. I'm joined today by Ricky Brundritt, who's the Senior Program Manager for Big Maps at Microsoft, who will be taking you through the presentation. At the end, I will be taking you through some licensing slides, just a brief introduction to the licensing. And if we have time, there will be a short section for Q&A. We will be recording this afternoon, and we'll be publishing this on our website. So if anybody wants to view the recording at a later date, that will be possible. And I'll now hand you over to Ricky. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. All right, so I'll start off with talking about how Bing Maps is available in some of our other Microsoft products today. After that, we'll then look at the development APIs, how to build an app, and what's available there. So Bing Maps has been around for quite a while, and we're integrated into nearly every Microsoft product today, and it keeps growing faster and faster. We get about 5 new internal products every month that come in and say, hey, we need Bing Maps in our app. And that's just internal. We have tons external as well. And so a great place to start if you're looking at adding maps to your app is look at the other Microsoft products that you already have or that you're using to see if those might meet your needs. And so, everything from, Microsoft Office to SharePoint to CRM and things like that usually have some form of mapping component to it. It may not be everything that you need, and in that case, that's when our development APIs can come in, but it's also a great place to start because it may exceed your needs. So some common ways we see businesses use maps today, one of the most common is business intelligence. We also see it used quite a bit in CRM type systems, both Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Salesforce, and other third-party CRM systems. Mobile asset tracking, so visualizing where field workers are or delivery trucks and things like that is quite a common scenario that we see as well. Disaster management, we're seeing this grow quite a bit, especially in the enterprise where companies need to be prepared just as well as other government agencies and things like that. And then, of course, there's consumer portals and apps. So, you get apps for your end users. You have websites and things like that. It could be a store locator. And so that's also a common use case. For a majority of these, they all kind of fall into the same, there's some kind of form of business intelligence. And that's what we see a lot of it with Bing Maps. And the primary reason being that maps make a great way to visualize data and engage users.
Hi, Ricky. Ricky, I do apologise for interrupting. We're having an issue. We've got quite a few messages saying that people aren't having any audio, aren't getting any audio.
Okay.
And I'm not sure why that is. Some people are. I've got some people saying it's working. Some people saying sound's missing.
It could be an issue on their end. They probably have to disconnect and reconnect.
Marie, we could also put up a message to get them to dial in on the landline number.
Okay, could you pop that up then on these screens so I can... Could you do that so Ricky can continue?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I do apologise, everybody.
Yeah. So for those who have no audio, please join the phone. There we go. All right, so we'll continue on here. So why are so many people using Bing Maps for analytics and business intelligence? Besides being engaging and useful for people to visualize data, there's also quite a bit of information you can gain that you can't get with traditional business intelligence dashboards. So if we take a look at this screenshot here of an interesting dashboard, we see 3 common dashboards up top. One, is a pie chart. We then have just a regular, table, and then we have a bar chart. And then underneath we have the map. But if we just focus on the top 3 and we try to answer this question, which sales region is doing the best overall? We look at the first pie chart. We see the red, blue, and green regions are doing well. Orange is doing okay. We then can verify this in the table, but it's not very engaging. It's very easy to miss things, and it can take a lot of time to gain any kind of valuable information out of that. And then finally, if we look at the bar chart, we can see, okay, the red region is doing the best. If we've kind of just stopped here, we would say, okay, overall the red region is doing the best. No reason to go any further. However, if we look at the map, we see that the orange area covers the smallest area, but it still has strong sales, and it actually has fewer stores than the red region. So the reason why the red region has so much penetration is they have a lot more stores than everyone else. And so this is information we wouldn't have gained before. And so now we actually find out that actually the orange region is the best region that we should model our sales after rather than the red region. All right. So if we look at another nice tool that's available through one of our Microsoft products, we have Power Maps inside of Excel. So this is available in Office Professional Plus 2013, 2016, and 365. And with this, you can visualize millions of rows of data, both in 2D and in 3D. The data can also be viewed as 3D bar charts, heat maps, clustered pushpins, administrative boundaries, and there's even some support for indoor custom maps. So if you have, it doesn't even have to be indoor, it could be any kind of custom map. If you just have data that's you want to overlay on top of an image, you can do that. And so we've seen them where people have just taken a screenshot of a website and then overlay their data on top of that, and that could be sometimes like click data and things like that. We also support importing custom regions from KML and Esri files, and you can also create storyboards and timelines. If you just excuse me here for a second, I'm going to mute the audience here. We've got some background noise. And okay, okay. There we go. So continuing on, we also have Microsoft Power BI. Power BI is similar to Power Maps, except that it's not constrained to the desktop version of Excel. It's available both in the web and also through various apps, so you can use it in mobile apps and in desktop apps. It creates a secure way for sharing business intelligence dashboards and makes it very easy to connect your data and visualize it. And we'll take a look at this right now. So we'll start off with the demo of Power Maps. So I have this data set of Starbucks locations in the US. As you can imagine, it's quite a large data set. A lot of different information in here. One of the key ones being a list of locations. There's also some individual address information and also latitude and longitude information. One key thing I will point out, for the mapping functionality, you don't need to have latitude and longitude information in your data set. As long as you have some kind of address or location-based information, it'll be able to use that and calculate the latitude and longitude information. So if you go to the Insert button, and then in Excel, you'll see a 3D Maps button. And so we go in there and press Open 3D Maps, and I just started a tour there this morning. And automatically it'll detect the latitude and longitude field or any kind of location field that you have and use that to map the data. So we look on the map here, we see a whole bunch of little blue dots or on the map indicating where each store is. And so this is a great initial visualization, but there's a lot of other ways we can visualize this data. We can also create a height field if we wanted to, or create a category field. So if we take a look at this here at some of our different fields, and let's see, let's add a category field, and we'll have the category be the ownership type. We now see that we have two different types of pushpins on the map. One, the blue one showing the locations that are owned by the company, and the other ones that are licensed locations, so they're not owned by Starbucks themselves, or just people who've licensed the brand. So we can go through, we can create a new scene. So we just press the new scene button, and we can go through and modify this data. So now we go through and we've created this chart here. So if we zoom in to make it a little bit easier to see, and we can take it back. So these two here kind of look very similar. Some more people here. Yeah. And so now going forward, we can take a look at some of the other visualizations. So we have pie charts here, and actually I think if we switch this over to this one here. Okay, that's visualized by size. Okay, we'll go by category. And we should get pie charts. I'm not sure why that's not quite working out. Going forward, we can go through and also take a look at the data as a heat map, which is quite interesting. Because you can then see the density of the data and of the locations. And as we zoom in, you can go through and you get more information. So what's also quite neat is you can also change some of the options. So in this case here, we might say, okay, maybe we want to change the size of the circles that are on the map. So there's a little radius information here, and we can change that. So if we want to represent each location as a smaller dot, we see less overlap and less heat, but it allows us to kind of easily see where the highest density areas are. Whereas if we had the circles too big, we end up with big blobs of high density, which could be useful in some cases. In this case here, we see, okay, we know there's a lot of Starbucks locations right in the central Seattle, but that may not be enough resolution or information for depending on what you're trying to gain from your data. Going forward, we can also go through and select these regions. So if we zoom out here, and we have to select the state here, and actually that's what I did for should have gotten that for let's go here, we'll go category and state, and we'll go, well, as you can see here, we got color-coded, well, we had color-coded states, I changed one there. Here we okay, it doesn't want to cooperate at the moment. And make sure I'm still connected here. Yeah. In any case, we can go through and create color-coded states. And oh, there, I unselected the location. That's why. And let's do this again. And for whatever reason, it doesn't want to cooperate. Oh, there we go. There we go. We got it sorted now. So yeah, now we'll choose ownership type, and we get a nice color-coded map. From here, we could go through and continue creating different visualizations, and we see here we have a couple of scenes. You can then go through and do play tour, and what it'll do is it'll take a look at the data, change it through the different scenes, and if you went through and changed the view, and saved a scene at different views, it will actually animate the path between those views like we're seeing here, which is quite interesting. So you can create very interactive scenarios or engaging scenarios and videos here, and you can export it as videos and share it with people. But this is good if you just want to share the data as a video. If you share the actual Excel file, people would get access to this tour if they have Power Maps installed. If they don't, then that might not be as useful. So going forward, we'll take a look at Power BI, which is a little bit more useful for sharing and your data securely. So if we go to powerbi.com or powerbi.microsoft.com and sign in, you'll see all the different dashboards that you have. And so one of the ones that comes by default is the retail analyst sample, and you'll see all sorts of different dashboards available that are being displayed to represent the data that's in that data set. You could easily upload your own data set if you wanted to from various locations, whether it's from files hosted in OneDrive or on your computer to connecting to databases or even accessing some of the data sets that we have out there. So one good data set that's in there is the Bing search data, so you can go in there and find out what are the keywords people have been searching for and combine that with your own kind of dashboard and data. So if you wanted to say, okay, my business is Bing Maps, how many people are actually searching for Bing Maps. You can see that as a little panel on your dashboard. And you can go through and manually create these dashboards if you wanted to, but one thing that's pretty cool is once you've set up the data or uploaded a data set, you can actually go into this little search box and tell it what you want. And so in this case here, if I say I want a filled map of sales by state, and get rid of that, correct my spelling here, there we go. We get a nice map here with color-coded states drawn on top, and I didn't have to do anything but type what I typed up there. I didn't have to go through and manually adjust any fields or select anything. Just a much simpler thing or way to implement maps. And you can imagine if you're a business person and you just basically come in and you have your data and you want to visualize it, you don't want to have to know how to build things or need to know how to use the tools. All you have to do is fill in some text here. And
but watching on,
there we go. So going back to the slide deck. All right, so now we'll take a look at the developer platform. So the Bing Maps, we have a lot of different APIs and tools available. So we have APIs for the web, primarily our version 7 JavaScript control, which is used by a large percentage of our customers. The main reason for that is not only does it work on PC and Mac browsers, but it's also supported across all the major mobile browsers as well. And so we see it used quite a bit in cross-platform applications. It's very stable. It's been we built it about 5 years ago and continued to improve it over time. So it's definitely the first place you should look if you're looking at creating a web-based app. We also have mobile APIs such as our Windows Phone map control and also our Windows 10 map control, which works on mobile as well. And then there's also, of course, we have map controls for Windows 8 and Windows 10.
Apologies, sounds like we've lost Ricky's sound, so bear with us, we'll be back online in a sec.
Have we got Ricky back now?
Yeah, it looks like someone muted me.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Hey, did you hear the spiel about web services? And can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we got up to the Windows piece, Ricky.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So for web services, we have a number of different web services available. I'll cover that in the next slide. Bing Maps is designed for enterprise. If you have a license with Bing Maps, you get a 99.9% uptime SLA. All licensed customers have access to our enterprise support team as well at no additional cost, which is great in case you have any issues, whether it's a simple data issue or development issue or a production-related issue. We also offer 24/7 phone support for those customers as well if there's a production-related issue. So if, in the middle of the night on a Saturday your app doesn't work, you can call us up and someone will get on it right away. Global coverage is something we strive for, although there is no perfect map out there. We continue to add a massive amount of data on a regular basis to Bing Maps. To give you an idea of the scale of Bing Maps, a single copy of our data set is around 12 petabytes, so it's quite a big system. Multiple device support I kind of alluded to with the web APIs. We see Bing Maps used across all sorts of devices, especially with the Windows 10 API now. Our Windows 10 API works across all Windows 10 devices, and you may know that Windows 10 has quite a few different devices out there. So not only is it PCs and phones, but there's HoloLens and the Surface Hub and a number of other different devices out there as well that the maps work on. As you can imagine, with the scale that Bing Maps is in terms of data set, we are a cloud-based service. We're actually Microsoft's first cloud service. We came out with our web version of our mapping product back in 2000. And what was quite interesting is when they designed Azure, they actually took a look at the Bing Maps infrastructure first and said, hey, okay, let's model after that and use that as a starting point. What's kind of funny is now that Azure has grown and quite a bit, we actually now host a lot of our new services on top of Azure just because it's easier for us. Looking at some of the services that are available, so geocoding is by far the most commonly used service. So if you have a location and you want to find its address, or if you have an address and you want to find its location, you can easily do that with that service. We also have a batch geocoding service available as well. So if you have a large number of addresses that you need to geocode, you can pass them all up in large batches of 200,000 addresses and have that as a single response. It saves you a lot of time and effort going that route, especially if you have a database of locations that you need to work with. Reverse geocoding is taking a location, getting its address. Routing directions gives you instructions on how to get from point A to point B. We actually support up to 25 waypoints, so if you want to go from point A to point B to point C and so on, you can do that with that service. We support driving, walking, and transit directions, and so lots of different options there and a lot of different features inside of that for customizing the routes. We have real-time traffic in there. We also have predictive traffic. So if you we actually have two different types of predictive traffic. The first one is if you calculate a really long route, say it's 3 hours long, we know that the traffic at this current time won't be the same 3 hours from now. So the last half of your route will be based on predictive traffic, whereas the first bit will be based on current traffic. The second type of predictive traffic that we use is you can actually select dates in the future, and based off of our historic traffic data that we have, will predict what the traffic conditions will be like. And so that's quite useful if you're trying to plan a trip, but you're not going for that trip until the weekend. You don't care what the traffic is today, you care about what the traffic will likely be like on the weekend. And so you can use that service to figure that out. We also make a lot of these services available through our APIs so that you don't have to connect to the REST services directly. We also have the static imagery service. So this is quite useful if you have a situation where you don't need a fully interactive map and you just want to minimize the amount of resources your apps use. This here allows you to get just an image of a map, and you can do some different customization to it, like have push pins put onto it or show routes. We have elevation data available as well. So if you want to know the elevation of the ground anywhere on the globe, that service will be able to provide that data to you. We have traffic incident data, so if, constructions, road closures, and things like that, you can find that information out, car accidents. We also have boundary data, so if you need postal code or zip code boundaries, neighborhood boundaries, city boundaries, state, province boundaries, country boundaries, you can use that service to pull that data into the map, and it's quite useful for that. We're actually looking at expanding that service out in about, I think, in the next month or so, to include a lot more boundary types as well. So stay tuned for that one if that's something you're interested in. We also have multiple culture support. So currently, Bing Map supports 117 languages, which, if you look at most other mapping platforms, is nearly double the second one that has a lot of cultures. The primary reason for that is that Bing Maps is built into Windows, so we need to support all the same languages as Windows. One thing that I don't have up here is the Bing Spatial Data Services. So we have a service where you can take your own data, upload it to our servers, and we'll expose it to you as a spatial REST service. So it saves you the trouble of having to take your data, put it in a database, and create a web service. And so it gives you the ability to do find nearby, find a long route, do intersection tests with the shapes. If you let the user draw a polygon on the map, you can then say find everything in that polygon, and also being able to filter based on different properties. So some commonly used visualizations that we see on Bing Maps here. So heat maps is a very common one. Being able to draw on the map is a common thing as well, and we have drawing tools available for Bing Maps. Clustering, for those not familiar with that, the more data you put on the map, the more cluttered the map becomes, and eventually if you put too much data, you just don't see the map. And so we see this quite a bit with push pins where people say, hey, I want to show all my customer locations on the map, and well, now you can't see the map, so it kind of loses the content or context. So with clustering, what it'll do is push pins that overlap, it'll group them together, represent them with a unique push pin, or in this case here, we see in the screenshot, we're seeing circles with numbers in it to tell you how many locations are grouped together. And as you zoom in and out, those clusters will either form or break apart automatically for you, so that the user can still see the map and get the idea about the content without it covering up the map completely. Data binning is another form of visualization that we're starting to see a little bit more commonly used now, and it's a combination of clustering and heat maps where data points are grouped into clusters, and then those clusters are then color-coded accordingly, and these clusters are then broken up into like a grid pattern here, and they use hexagons in this case. Another common visualization is what's called thematic mapping. It basically, you take well-known boundaries and color-code them based on some metric in your data. In this case here, we're taking a look at, I believe the data set there was for unemployment rates based on counties in the U.S. So to get started with Bing Maps, the first thing you need to do is kind of figure out what kind of app you're building and what API works best for what you're trying to build. And so if you go to Microsoft.com/maps, there's a developer tab, and there's a great page on choosing your API, and it tells you all of our main Bing Maps APIs and gives you a list of all the different features each one has. If you're targeting web-based applications, the Ajax version 7 control will likely be the main control that you use, and possibly some of the services. If you're creating a Windows 10 app, then you'll probably want to use the Windows 10 API, or if you're a Windows 8 app, use the Windows Store app API. We also have a WPF application as well, or API as well, if that's something you need. Once you've chosen your API, the next task is to create a Bing Maps account and key. So if you go to bigmapsportal.com and press the sign in button, or if you have an account, you'll just sign in, otherwise it'll have you sign up. Once you're in there, you can easily create a Bing Maps key and use that to authenticate your usage with the Bing Maps service. We do have great free terms of use, so if you just want to try it out and see what's available, I highly recommend going in then and trying it. You won't have any issues there. If you do eventually get to high volumes of usage, the account will just be blocked once it hits that cap. Depending on the type of application, some have daily limits, some have yearly limits, and so it'll automatically reset as soon as you've made room in your account. So if you hit the daily limit, the next day it'll free up and you can continue using the API. So taking a look at a couple of interesting apps that are out there today that are using Bing Maps. So if you travel a lot, you may be familiar with this one called FlySmart. It's using our JavaScript control and our cross-platform app for Windows Phone, iOS, Android, and BlackBerry. And it uses what we call venue maps. So it gives you floor plans inside of buildings, and you can navigate between the different floors, and all the locations are interactive, so you can get information about them, such as the phone number and website, if there is a website. So this is something that they do for all airports that we have data for, and it gives you a nice way to kind of see where things are inside the airport. I used to use this all the time when I traveled a lot, especially when I was traveling across multiple countries, because it was great to be able to see, I have to go through secondary security. Is there anything good to eat on the other side? If there is, great. If there isn't, well, maybe I should grab some food ahead of time. And being able to take a look at a map like this, and it showed me where I am with my GPS, it was quite useful. Another really interesting app that we've seen is called Conquer. It's a video game that's based on top of maps, and targets cross-platform again, and uses the Bing Maps JavaScript control for that. this control here was quite interesting when they, or this app when they built it. Initially, they targeted iOS and Android, and most of the app is written in native code. And they ended up realizing that once they started developing on Windows and using Visual Studios, it was significantly easier to use Visual Studio to debug and their issues and kind of figure out how they wanted things to work. And so they end up then leading with developing for Windows, and then once they figure out how things were going to work, then taking that over to iOS and Android. Inside of Windows 10, we have the new map control there, and it provides 3 key features that we don't have in most of our other controls, which is 3D maps, street-side imagery, and offline maps functionality. Currently, we have over 250 plus cities in 11 countries with 3D maps, and over 500 cities with Streetside. And the resolution of these 3D maps is some of the highest resolution you'll find for online-based maps. A single data point has a resolution of 30 centimeters. So if you measure the corner of a building in real life and then go through and measure it from here, you'll find that that point is plus or minus 32 centimeters, its actual location in real life. And we actually have the technology to go down to 5 centimeters, but the data just explodes in size and becomes unusable for most users. So now we'll take a look at how to create a Windows Universal app and add a map to it. So let's go into Visual Studios here, and we'll create a new Windows project. And of course, everything wants to work slow when I'm presenting. All right, here, yeah. So yeah, we'll go Universal Windows App, and we'll call the app My Map App. And as it loads here, and we'll skip the source control. We'll close that up. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just open up the main page XAML file, and we'll have to add a reference to where the map control functionality is. So if we we'll close that there. So we'll add a namespace reference here. And we'll go windows.ui.xaml.controls.maps. There we go. And actually, let's put an S on that one. And then now that we have the namespace in there, we should have access to the map control itself. So if we type in our namespace, there we go. We see the map control as an option, and we'll give our map control a name, say My Map. And there we go. That's a really basic application. If we run the app, we should see a map up here, and it's still building. So initially we'll just see a 2D map, which is pretty straightforward, nothing too exciting there. I'm sure you've probably seen 2D maps before. But there will be a couple other things that we'll point out as well. There we go. So the map's nice and loaded. So a couple things worth noticing. The first one is, as you zoom in, you kind of see the labels are kind of stay on the map and zoom in as well. That is a good sign that we're using what's called vector data. So the label data there is actually sitting inside the app, and it can move around and things like that. It's not tied to the actual map tiles themselves, which is quite useful because that means that we can do a lot more interesting things with it in the future. But one thing to note right away is we see in the bottom corner we have this warning saying map service token not specified. If you try to deploy this app into production, you'll likely still see that, or you'll still see that warning. So we'll see what's involved in getting rid of that warning. I think if you try to go and release into the store, and it won't pass certification. So the first thing we need to do is add a map service token And so we go through to say map service token. So map service token is another word for Bing Maps key. It's an older name that came from the Windows Phone side of things, so it could be a bit confusing for some people. So in case, oh, that's the wrong one. Let me grab my key here. There we go. So I got my nice long key that is a bit cryptic, but that's what we need. If we were to run it again, we'd see that warning's gone. But before we do that, we're going to add a couple more things to our map. So you may have noticed that the map was just a basic 2D map. There was no controls to do anything with the map. And so we're going to change that. So we're going to add some zoom bars. We're also going to add the ability to rotate the map and also tilt the map. And so to do that, we can go through here. We'll see zoom interaction mode. And we can go through and say we'll allow it to both handle gestures and controls. So focus there. And then in addition to that, we're going to add the ability to tilt. So there's a tilt interaction control. And then finally, we'll add the ability to rotate and that control. Going a bit further into our app here, what we're going to try to do is we're going to add some buttons so we can visualize the map in 3D. We'll also add a button for visualizing the map with Streetside, and we'll do this inside of a nice little stack panel. We'll add our buttons, and so we'll go horizontal and vertical alignment equals top, and let's go that horizontal alignment center. Okay, and then we'll add a button and content being 3D, and click equals show 3D maps underscore clicked, and we don't need that plus sign there. And we'll just add a little margin equals that. And we'll add another button here quickly, and we'll call this one Streetside Maps and show side maps, and we can get rid of that margin there. And so now we have to add our callback, our event handlers for these click events. So if we just go here to go to definition, it'll add it for us. We'll do the same thing. This one here, right click and go to definition. All right. Actually, we should probably add a third button to go back to 2D because that might be useful to do at some point. And so we'll go 2D. All right. So if we were to run this right now, all we would see is our new buttons on the map, but we wouldn't be able to do anything with them because we haven't wired anything up. So what we'll do is we'll start off with this 2D button. Pretty straightforward. When someone clicks that button, we want to jump back into 2D. And the way we do that is we say, our my map or whatever that you've called your map, and you go to style. Equals, and then we go map style dot road, and we see it nice autocomplete there, so I didn't have to add in the namespace. And that's all you have to do to jump into 2D from whatever mode you may be in other than 2D. Going into 3D, it's a little bit more complicated. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that 3D is supported. So one cool thing about the Windows 10 map control is it can detect if the user's device can support 3D. If it can't, we can find that out. And so the nice thing about that is it gives you the ability to target all devices out there that support Windows 10. So if someone's using a low-end Windows phone and it can't handle 3D, we can handle that in our code. So if we go, if my map is 3D supported, we can then verify, okay, if it's supported, then we can go and call some maps or some functionality here. In this case here, we just set the style to be equal to, let's see, map style, to the aerial 3D and with roads. So there's two different 3Ds. There's aerial 3D and then there's 3D with roads. The main difference being one will just give you a nice globe with no roads and labels on it. So we'll include the labels. And so that's all we need to do for the 3D button. So yeah, pretty simple so far. Now we can go to Streetside. Streetside gets a little bit more complicated. So first thing, again, we have to check to see if Streetside is supported by the map. In lower end devices, it may not be, so we can check that out. There we go. Now we can see if it's supported. If it is, we can do something. So what we have to do, or what we will do in this case, is if someone presses the Streetside button, we'll just grab the center coordinate from the map and try to load into Streetside. So the first thing we need to do is see if we can find a nearby panorama for the Streetside. And so we'll go panorama equals, no, that's not the one I want, Streetside panorama. And okay, so now I need to add the namespace to the okay, that's not what I'm looking for. Streetside panorama. I did. Oh, got one too many M's there. Here we go. Here we go. We have to add a reference to the namespace here to our project so that it recognizes it. Now that we've done that, we can then find nearby. And so we'll do mymap.center. So we have it find nearby panoramas close to the center. One thing worth noticing is this is an async method, so we have to go through and do async and await on our function here, or our method. And from there, now we can check to see if the panorama, if any panorama was found. And if there is, let's show it. So let's go, let's see, Streetside view equals view street side panorama, or no, experience. Yeah, I already have the panorama. And we just, basically what you do is you create a new Streetside experience and you pass in the panorama. It'll then load that on top of the map. And so we can go through and add a couple options here. So in this one case here, we'll also add in what's called an overview map. And so that's kind of like a map, just a road map to kind of show where you are below the Streetside functionality, which is quite useful to keep an idea of where you are, because it's very easy to get disoriented when looking at Streetside after you've moved around quite a bit. And then from there we can just go to the My Map and say that and specify a custom experience. In this case, it's the Streetside experience, and we're done. So now, if we go through and run the demo, I run our app here. These three buttons are all wired up, and we should be able to select the different view types that we have here. So we see our nice buttons up at the top, and we also see our navigation control. So the nice navigation controls, we can rotate here. You can use it with the mouse or with touch as well. If you just go on on touch on the screen and rotate with your fingers using two fingers, the same as you would with any other touch device with a map, that works as well. We'll see here that we can't yet tilt. You have to zoom in a bit before it allows you to tilt, and we see the button here has changed. So now we can tilt the map and see it from different angles, which is quite nice. And then, of course, we have zoom buttons here, which aren't that exciting, so we won't work on won't bother with that one right now. We'll zoom into Washington just to give us something interesting to look at, and we'll switch into 3D here. And so we first notice that we have the aerial. Where are our road names? And I'm not sure if they're not loaded yet or if I selected the wrong one. Okay, let's zoom in here. Okay, something's not working here. Maybe select a different city. Let's go back to 2D for a second here. Yeah, let's go to New York. And we'll switch into 3D here. Might be a little bit slow here because I'm sharing my screen. That's probably why it's not loading up. Just quickly verify I did do 3D. Okay. Well, in any case, when you don't have your network being hogged by sharing your screen, you'll normally see 3D buildings appear up on the map. We can then jump into Streetside. So if we center ourselves over top of the street, which we are, it's gone through and found ourselves a panorama. And we see this little overview map here at the bottom, so we can kind of see where we are. And we can go through and navigate through the Streetside imagery quite easily. Maybe don't go down a dead end. And when we're done, we can just simply press the X button to get back to whatever view we were at before. All right, so that's basically what we wanted to create in this app. So now we can go back to the presentation. Where'd my slide deck go? All right. All right. So going forward, another type of scenario that we see quite often is people want to visualize large data sets. And so this is an interesting case study that I thought that I would show. And the Office of National Statistics came to us a few years ago and said, hey, we have all these census boundaries and we want to be able to show them on an interactive map to our users on the web. But the problem is that the data set is massive. And so they have their what's called the lower layer super output areas for the census boundaries. And this consists of 175,000 polygons that are about 200 gigabytes in size. And the complexity of the data, there's over 44 million data points, so each polygon has about 252 data points. And one of the nice things, though, is there's only one data set to show on the map, so we don't have to worry about constantly changing the data. And you know, the data only changes once every 10 years, so it's not too bad there. So with that, we took a look at what we could do to visualize the data. So we used what's called a dynamic tile layer. And basically what we've done is we've taken the data and rendered it as an image on the server, so using Microsoft Azure, and then overlay that on top of the map. And so this is this is what the architecture of that service looks like. So, you know, we stored all the data in SQL Azure, which supports spatial data, so you can do complex queries like find a long route and find nearby and things like that with a little bit of work, but it provides you a lot of all the tools you need to do things like that. And then also we used some storage in Azure to store the tiles that we generated just for caching purposes for better performance. We then pulled into the Bing Map services to pull in the map control itself and overlay the data, and then we end up putting it on the web. So we'll take a look at that demo. So this is available online if you wanted to play around with it with yourself. So when we're zoomed out, these polygons are so small that you end up with just a big blob. So we just see blue here. But as we zoom in, we'll start seeing the individual boundaries, and we can zoom in more and more into these areas. And so you can see that they load in quite quickly, but you can also see that they kind of load in as squares. Those are what we call the tiles. And it's a nice quick way to load in a large data sets. Now, being that it's an image, you might say, well, I can't interact with an image. If I want to click on it, it's not going to do anything. I can't change the color. Well, that's not entirely true. You can still do stuff like that. It just takes a little extra effort. And so if you wanted to support click, you could just simply find out where they clicked on the map and then do a query against the database and say, hey, return me the polygon that intersected that click. Similarly, so just to do something a little bit different, in this app here, I've created a little push pin that's draggable, and we can drag and drop it over top of a polygon. It'll then call the server and say, hey, return me that polygon and any metadata that belongs to it. And so here we go. We got that polygon data displayed on the map and all the information that goes with it. We can also easily change the opacity of our tile layer here so we can make it more or less relevant to what we're seeing. So in this case here, we might want to just focus on that one polygon that we have on the map, so we can turn off the base layer that we had before. So overall, it wasn't extremely difficult to build this app. It was just a matter of figuring out the right way to do it. We have lots of documentation on how to create something like this and lots of code samples. And the code samples are very reusable to the point where you basically just have to point it to a database and add your Bing Maps key, and you're pretty much ready to go. Oh, wrong button. So continuing on, I'll hand it off to Mark now, who will talk about licensing. Mark, are you on mute?
Yeah, sorry, still on mute. Yeah, thanks for that, Ricky. I just wanted to take you through very briefly the different license models that there are. There's two methods to license Bing Maps, either as an end user or as an ISV, an independent software vendor who wants to license Bing Maps and bundle it with their solutions. So the different license models under the end user licensing and the ISV licensing are either per user. So we just take the number of users that you have and license those users. And then there's a per transaction. So in that case, we don't really care how many users you've got. You just pay for the actual consumption, the transactions that you consume, which can be used for an internal business application, or would be used for public-facing websites as well. And the third is a per asset model. So if you're going to create a mobile asset management type application, fleet management application, we would license it per asset. So the ISV contract is for those ISVs who want to take Bing Maps and bundle the licensing with their application, so that the end users don't then have to license it for themselves. So the model is that you would buy an annual bundle up front. So the per user and the per asset, for example, start with 100 assets or 100 users, and then any additional users or assets that you need to add to that over the course of the year, you would just report to us, and you would get a per unit per month price, and you just report that to us, and we would invoice you quarterly in arrears.
All right. Thanks, Mark. So one big thing I wanted to make you aware of. So next month, at the end of next month, we have the Microsoft Build Conference going on in San Francisco. If you're attending in person, come take a look at our live session. Otherwise, you can always join through Channel 9. They do live recordings and live streaming. And so highly recommend you come and take a look. We plan on making a lot of announcements, and we'll also be announcing a lot of updates as well. A lot of cool and exciting things coming to Bing Maps, so it's definitely worth your time and effort to come and see that session. We'll also have a pre-recorded sessions available on Channel 9 for Build that will be more technical in nature and less about announcements and more about getting down and dirty and doing some really interesting, powerful things with Bing Maps. If you do attend in person, we also have the Bing booth there, where myself and a number of other people from the Bing Maps team will be. And so if you have any questions about Bing Maps, or you want to take a closer look at some of the things that we announced, come visit us at the booth. And then also, again, channel9.msdn.com. You can go there and watch the live streams and the recordings for Build and for our sessions as well. So now we'll open up the floor to questions and answers. If we don't get to your question today, feel free to email graymatter@mapping@graymatter.com. You can also message us on Twitter at Bing Maps. We also have a Bing Maps blog, which is a great place to find out lots of information around Bing Maps. So if you do have questions, just type them into the IM window here, and we'll take a look at them. And okay, so right here, let's see if we got any questions here. Looks like it's mainly just audio issues. Oh. And all right, doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment.
Ricky, have you got any tips for people who, when trying to decide on what API to use, what criteria should they consider?
Yeah, so there's two primary things you should look at. First one should be what kind of app are you trying to build and what are you targeting. So if you're targeting a web-based app or a cross-platform app, you'll probably want to use their JavaScript control. And the other thing to consider is what programming languages do you know? What are you strong in? So if you just want to create an app but you aren't tied to where it's going to have to be deployed, but maybe C++ or C#, then you'll probably want to use one of our native controls like the Windows 10 control, or possibly even the WPF control if you want it to work on older Windows platforms. So the WPF control works on Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10, and so it gives you that flexibility there. That said, WPF is a bit of an older technology and quickly falling behind some of the features and functionalities that we have in Windows 10. All right, looks like we got lots of questions now. Let's see. Is it possible to license Bing Maps data for a tile layer to use in third-party map tools rather than the API? Yes. We actually have documentation on how to directly access our tiles, and we have a lot of third-party controls out there. So Leaflet, OpenLayers, ArcGIS, Esri's ArcGIS, AutoCAD, and a number of other controls out there make use of the Bing Maps tile layers in this way. If you have any questions about that, if you want more details, just send us an email, and we'll send you over the details on that and help you get that set up. In the UK, you provide ordnance survey level mapping. Does this attract extra licensing costs or implications? Nope. So the nice thing about Bing Maps is once you license Bing Maps, you get access to the full platform. Only caveat there is if you're a government agency, you can't use the bird's eye imagery. There's a data restriction in there. But if you're not a government agency, you have access to everything, including the ordnance survey maps that we have inside of Bing Maps. Another cool thing about that is because we have an agreement with the Ordnance Survey, if you have any Ordnance Survey data or Ordnance Survey derived data that you have permission to use, whether it's their free data or if you have a license to use their data, you can actually use that data with Bing Maps, and there's no licensing issues between Ordnance Survey or us with doing that, which is a nice benefit to using Bing Maps control compared to some other third-party controls out there. So rough cost for 100 users for 1 year as ISV, offline use. I think those are two questions there. So Mark, I don't know if you have any numbers on for individual, like for 100 users for an ISV.
Don't have the figures off the top of my head. Probably the best thing is for Chris to use the mapping@greymatter.com email address, and we'll get some pricing over.
Yeah, let's see if we can show that one there. The other question there was offline. So for offline, we have that with our Windows 10 map control. That's the only place we offer offline currently. So that will work offline on mobile and on tablets, and desktop applications. So that's our only option right now for offline. We did have some older map controls that were CD based that we've recently retired that did work offline. I don't recommend trying those out as they likely won't be able to register them now. Okay, for cost for individual users. It's another question about individual users. So in that case, you have contact Grey Matter, and they'll provide you some details based around the number of users you're looking for. Is there a model?
Yeah, the individual users, if that means an individual customer, that would be the end user pricing. So yes, again, just contact us and we'll get that pricing over to you.
All right. Is there a model for building proof of concept tools for ISVs that is lower cost of entry? Yeah. So we have the free terms of use, which are very useful for ISVs or anyone who's developing on top of Bing Maps. So if you're developing a Windows-based app, so Windows Phone, Windows 10, 8, WPF, or what have you, we allow 50,000 transactions a day for free, which is quite a bit. I believe that works out to 18 million transactions a year, which is twice the free usage any other mapping provider allows. Very rarely do we see non-production apps exceed those limits. Even production apps, there's only a small handful that exceed those free limits. If you're targeting web or cross-platform, so a non-Windows based application, our limits are quite a bit lower. We offer 125,000 transactions a year, but that's usually more than enough for doing development and testing out tools and things like that. We are investigating the possibility of having a special terms of use for partners who want to just have live demos running, but I don't have any details on that I can share at the moment. We also, if you're education or a nonprofit, we also have really good free terms of use for those people as well. All right, we are slightly worried about billable transactions and how many tiles are used. Is there a mechanism to store tiles? All right, so two things here. First one is you don't pay for tiles. With Bing Maps, our licensing is a lot simpler than other mapping providers. So if you load a map and you only load 8 tiles, or if you load 100 tiles, the cost is the same. We don't charge per tile. We've extracted or took away that cost, and we handle that on our back end. We handle that just for the map load. So basically, what happens with Bing Maps, you load the map, you generate a billable transaction for that load action. Anything after that doesn't generate any billable transactions. So if you use our search module to do geocoding, or if you calculate directions with the map control, those generate non-billable transactions. If you want to call any of our REST services, you can get a special key from the map called a session key and use that with the REST service. And what that will do is mark those transactions as non-billable as well. And the general idea is when a user uses your application, they should only generate one billable transaction per page view. So if they load up a web page and they have a map and they do some geocoding, do some routing, and load a lot of data on the map, maybe pan around a lot, it'll only generate one billable transaction. It could generate 50 or 100 non-billable transactions in the background, but those don't count against you. So that's the first one around the billable transaction stuff. In terms of storing tiles, we don't allow that. That's a restriction from our data provider. We need to report the individual tiles to them because we do have to pay for individual tiles. We just don't pass that cost on to you. We cover that inside of that initial billable transaction. So we just try to simplify the licensing for our users. With regard to OS data, if you have geospatial data owned in-house and have OS licenses, this data can be overlaid on Bing Maps within the terms of use. So yes. So if you have any data that you have ownership of or you have rights to use, you can overlay on top of Bing Maps. So if it's OS data, not a problem. If you have your own data that you've collected, you can overlay that as well with Bing Maps. And kind of tying that in with one of the other questions from before, if you're using a third-party map control and like Leaflet or OpenLayers and pulling in Bing Maps, again, you can still overlay OS data on top of the Bing Maps layers. Bandwidth consumption for 2D and 3D. So 2D obviously will be a lot faster. The bandwidth usage is fairly low. A single tile is typically, it varies between road and aerial. So a road tile is maybe 10 kilobytes. An aerial tile will be about 40 kilobytes. And the amount of bandwidth you use all varies depending on how big your map is. If you have a 4K screen with a full screen map, I think that works out to around 40 tiles just per view. So as you pan and zoom in, you're loading a lot more tiles than if you just had a small map on a small screen. But the data size for 2D is definitely going to be a lot smaller than 3D. The 3D data, if you load up a full city in 3D, which typically doesn't happen, usually what will happen is it'll load lower resolution models first, and then increases the resolution as you zoom into certain areas. But if you zoomed into a full city and loaded all the high resolution models, it's about 330 megabytes. So it is quite a bit of data for 3D, but not massive and usable. And in most cases, you likely won't hit 330 unless you spent a lot of time navigating in one area. Is public traffic routing, bus, train, metro, available? In our case, we need it for Germany. And if yes, where may I find information on the coverage? All right, so yes, we do have public transit routing. And if you go to MSDN here, so inside of MSDN, so if you look up Bing Maps MSDN, you'll find a list of all our different APIs and documentation. In here we also have geographic coverage information, transit coverage, and traffic coverage. So transit coverage, which is bus and what have you. You can go through here. We can take a look at Europe, and I know we have coverage in Germany. It'll vary by city, and but we do have a list in here that'll show us. So if we go to, let's go Germany. Here we go. You can go through and see all the different cities and the different transit providers that we have in Germany, and it's a fairly long list. We got Berlin and a couple of other cities as well. So you can go through and find all this information on MSDN. Okay, how does the performance of the map change based on increasing polygons and assets? Well, with pretty much any control that you use, whether it be JavaScript or native XAML control, the more data you add to the map, the slower it will become. And just the more data you add to the app, the slower it will become in general. So, yeah. You can still handle quite a bit of data. Our JavaScript control, so the version 7 control, I believe, can handle easily, several hundred polygons, depending on the resolution. If you have, one polygon with 1 million points, it'll obviously be slow because there's just a lot of data for a single object to render. We are looking at ways to improve rendering in Bing Map, but as it is today, our map controls are very powerful and very fast at rendering, and are some of the fastest ones out there. That said, depending on what kind of data you're working with, there may be other options to look at. So if you want to show every every county in the whole world, and you got tons and tons of data, and it's measured in gigabytes, you probably don't want your end user having to download all that data, because they'll spend an hour waiting for the map to load, and by then they'll probably have gone. And so in that case then you might want to look at the dynamic tile. There's an example that I showed earlier, where in the back end I had several gigabytes worth of data, but to the end user it loaded within seconds. Going forward, next question we have, when using the Bing Maps API from within JavaScript on the browser client side, how do recommend protecting the license key? So that's a question that comes up from time to time. There really isn't a need to. So anyone can create a Bing Maps key and start using the platform without any cost. That's why we have the free terms of use. And one, over the years, this question's come up quite a few times, but we do have systems in place to detect if someone's taken your key and used it elsewhere, and we can figure out how much transactions they used and credit you accordingly, and also mitigate the situation. That said, in the 6 or 7 years that we've had Bing Maps keys, there's only been 3 reported issues that we've came across with, apps using someone else's keys. And after we investigated it, in all 3 cases, it was basically someone created a code sample and they handed it off to someone else, or they published their code sample online and they left their key in the code, and someone else just took the code and ran it and didn't realize that there was someone else's key in it. And so at the end of the day, it all became user error. The only time we've ever seen someone go out and steal a key is they go to our Bing Maps site and steal it from the Bing Maps site. They haven't done that against any of our customers. But if they did, we're able to detect that and mitigate it.
Okay, thanks for that, Ricky. There's a good array of questions there. If anybody's got any more questions, please feel free to email them to us at mapping@greymatter.com. We also have resellers in various regions as well. So if your question is from, if you're from a region where we have a reseller, the answer may well come from our reseller rather direct from Grey Matter. So just be aware of that, please. But yeah, if you have any other questions, just please email them into mapping@greymatter.com.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We hope you found this valuable, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Have a great day.